Faith Steps video series. I'm Erik, one of the pastors here at Our Savior's Luther. As we were preparing to do this, one of the things that I started thinking about was my growing up years and the things that impacted my faith. When I was growing up, I didn't really attend church all that often. I was baptized and confirmed in the Episcopal Church. I learned how to be an acolyte. I went to worship there on Easter and Christmas. But I really didn't spend a lot of time at church. You see, for me, church was, boring. Over my college years, I started out on this search, as it was, a search for purpose, a search for meaning in my life and in the world that I was a part of. And it was during that search I realized just how important the issue of relationships were. You see, one Sunday morning I woke up and I was living with a house of other guys, and I decided for some reason to go to church. So I drove down the road, and as I was driving down, on the left-hand side was Sunrise Baptist Church, and they had services that were starting at 10 a.m. On the right-hand side was First Luther, and they had services starting at 9. It was about 5 to 9 that day. So I decided I didn't want to waste an entire hour. So I would continue this search that I was on by attending church at First Luther. Well, I pulled in the car and got out, walked into the church, and right away I was greeted so warmly. Then I went and I thought I'd sit in the back row of the church and just sort of observe what was taking place. Little did I know that everybody likes to sit in the back row of the church. Well, this day I sat down there and the row was packed, and I looked over across the aisle and there was this little old lady sitting there. And she stood up when she saw me sit down and came over to me. And she looked at me and said, "You know, you look lost. Why don't you let me help you with this worship service? Why don't you let me show you how we use this hymnal? You know, worship sometimes can be a bit confusing for newcomers. Would it be all right if I sat next to you and walked through the entire service with you?" And she did. She told me when to stand and when to sit. She showed me how they take communion. She went through the entire service with me, starting to build a relationship with me. After the service was over, I thought, I can leave now. I went through this. I did it. But as I was walking out, this same lady grabbed my arm and she said, "Where are you going? We're Lutheran. We've got coffee and cookies. Come join us down in the fellowship hall. There's some people that I want you to meet." And so I did. I went there. I met those people. She kept introducing me to more and more of them. And because of that, I went back. I went back the following week and the week after that. This search led me to that place. And that person started to build that relationship. Not only that, but she was one of those instruments that helped me to see the relationship that God wants to have with me and with all of His children. You see, this journey of faith that we're on, this journey that I often refer to as faith steps, it's not done alone. We were created to be in community. We were created to be with others. And this journey that we're on in life, it is done in relationships. In relationship with God and in relationship with other people. And it is through these other people that we get to see the face of Christ shining back at us. It is through Christ that we are empowered to be in relationships with others so that we can love and forgive and share all of those gifts we've been given. Relationships are essential. And thinking about the issue of relationships, I thought back to a story in the Bible. It's a story about a guy named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, he was a tax collector, and really he was not very well liked in his community. Tax collectors were really looked down upon at that time. Quite often they were viewed as lowly as thieves. And Zacchaeus one day, he's out and about, and he hears that this guy Jesus is coming through town. Now he's heard all about Jesus. He's a prophet. He's out there preaching and teaching. He's been healing people. And so he decides that he wants to meet this Jesus. Well, he goes and he realizes there's these huge crowds gathered where Jesus is coming, and he can't see anybody. So he climbs up to the top of a tree and he looks down so he can just see this Jesus pass him by. Well, as he's up there in the tree, Jesus walks by and he looks up and he sees Zacchaeus. And he says, Zacchaeus, come down from there. Can you imagine? Someone who's never met you, someone who's referred to as a prophet, maybe even the Messiah, coming into town and knowing your name. He's never met you, yet he knows your name. So Zacchaeus is up there and he hears Jesus say, come down from there, and what else can you do? Then Jesus says, I want to come to your house. I want to come and eat with you. In essence, what Jesus is saying is, I want to have a relationship with you. So come down out of that tree and let's go eat. And so Zacchaeus did. He came down. They went to his house. They ate together. They talked. They started a relationship. And it was a relationship that changed Zacchaeus' life. You see, that's what God does. God changes lives. God comes to us where we are. He calls us by name. He initiates relationships with us. And He changes our lives. So my prayer for you today is that your eyes would be opened to see the many and wondrous ways that God is working at initiating a relationship with you, and to see how God is blessing you by changing your life. For you are His child, you are His beloved, and you are cared for.